Two. Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Unbreaking Science. I'm your host, Dr. James Lyons-Weiler, coming to you live from the WWDNYK studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a great number of many things, including but not limited to realities and fictions around the coronavirus outbreak from China. And I'm so happy to say that I have a very interesting, energetic, and very personable guest tonight um, to share with you her perspectives. And I'm going to pitch this as, if it's all right with her, I'm going to pitch this as somebody who's not anti-vax talking about coronavirus. I'm vaccine risk aware with somebody who is maybe 100%, maybe 99%. I don't know, but let's bring on Jaclyn Gallion. How you doing, Jackie?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. So, I invited you last minute. I want to thank you for joining last minute. You're one of the most active voices, excuse me, in the vaccine risk aware movement. You and I were both recently featured a bit on we are currently featured in a documentary on Netflix. How about that?
Not by choice, but yes, we were.
So, anytime you speak in public, right? That's a choice. And so we chose to speak in public. And did you know that Netflix was there that day?
I I don't I remember someone mentioning something about filming a documentary, but I
Yeah,
didn't I was focused on giving a rally speech, and it was my second speech that I've ever given in my life, and
yeah.
so it was like I was trying to focus on that. And as you could tell in the video, I'm like um Dr. Rick Kirchner hopped up there and had to hold my paperwork for me since I was nervous.
You're a very powerful public speaker, Jackie, and I think that you carry a very serious a message that resonates with a lot of people. The message that parents should, when confronted with the option of vaccinating or not vaccinating, have the right to choose what's right for them. Right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I enjoy listening to you speak in public, and there's a time for facts. There's never a time for fiction on our part. There's time for fiction on people who would trick you and mislead you, and we're going to get to some of that. But there's also a time for rhetoric. And I don't know if you know this or not, but rhetoric is actually a skill. Some people say, well, that's just a rhetorical argument, or they'll just say, oh, you're just using rhetoric, but rhetoric is actually a classical method of communicating a point. Rhetorical statements and rhetorical um, commentary, you are allowed to use a little bit more passion, less kind of like just reason. You're allowed to use more of your heart, less maybe more brain, less brain, whatever. But you're also allowed to use a little bit of hyperbole and analogies and extend other people's analogies. And the last time I saw you speak, you spoke about you didn't choose this war. And so while I have you, I think I'd like you to expand on your thoughts about that. So who were you replying to when we were in Washington and you said that you did not choose to be in this war?
Well,
And
if you
what
think
and, and,
about
and, and
all
what
the,
is the war for people who are new to the show? What is the war you're talking about?
well, I think that there's been a war waged from our public health department in pharma. It's been waged against microorganisms.
Okay.
Anytime they wage a war, there's casualties, and our children and us are caught in the crosshairs of the casualty, and we're considered casualties in their war. So that's kind of how I perceive it, and I think that it's time that we get to stand up and say no more.
No more for you or no more for everyone? Would you have it that
I don't think that we should be viewed as casualties. You cannot
okay.
take a magnifying glass to people dying from certain vaccine targeted infections, but then ignore the people that are dying from the vaccines. A death is
Absolutely.
a death.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the accepted collateral damage of children who are killed or seriously injured or given chronic illnesses from vaccines, it's met with denialism, right? And so the first
Yeah.
person that I saw, that I heard ever actually declare war on what they call anti-vaxxers, which I'm not. I'm a member of the vaccine risk aware community, was Art Kaplan. He's a faculty member at New York University. And Art Kaplan, in one of these videos of a conference that he was at, basically said, you know, we're at war with the anti-vaxxers, and so we can do anything we want to do. And when that video is circulated, well, he's a bioethicist and he's declaring war on his fellow Americans, saying that they're going to use misinformation and do anything that they want to do, as if we're criminal for knowing that vaccines can hurt and maim some people. And in my case, calling for safer vaccines. In your case, calling for choice for families. I also support choice for families. And so, you know, I think we've come a long ways since then. And so I really like that you focused your comments on, hey, listen, CDC, society, humanity has declared war on microbes, and your family, you're not enlisting them in this war. You're going to face the microbes with your natural immunity. And if you have casualties in your family from infection, then that was a risk that you took, just the same way that if you have casualties in your family from injection. And it's you're right, and you just don't want to have to be told what your options are. And I don't want to speak for you, but do I have that right?
Yeah, you have that right. Yep.
Awesome.
I did not sign my children up for this war.
Yeah, it was a good allegory, I think is the right word for it. So right
It was
on.
fun to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It kind of took me by for surprise. I was like, oh my God, where is she going with this? You know, when you start talking about war, you start talking about, you know, you're from Western Washington, and you know, I'm like, what is she? Oh, but it
I'm
was
Eastern Washington.
Eastern. Sorry, my bad. Geography. So
We're tougher over here.
yeah. So I was a little bit nervous when you actually said it, and then I realized what you were saying. You're actually saying a very wise thing, which is when you try to force somebody else's family to vaccinate, you're enlisting them in a real war with real casualties, with real mortality and real morbidity. And I don't
Yes.
think that has been thought through, certainly in the way that the public health officials and CDC has represented things. So here on Unbreaking Science, we are focused on fixing what's wrong with public health policy, fixing what's wrong with science so that we can know things better. Science is a way of knowing, philosophy of science, and everything else. So it's a real treat to be able to get right into, you know, the nitty gritty. And like I said, with your permission, I'd like to represent this as somebody who's not anti-vax, although they call me anti-vax because I say vaccines can hurt and kill, with someone who is anti-vax for her family, right? Is that okay if we represent it
Yes,
that way?
I'm anti-vax for my family. Yes.
All right, cool. So what I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about today with you is there's a certain timeline that I've typed up to follow here, and the timeline begins um, with, you know, the news that came forward with an outbreak of a coronavirus, and you can see the coronavirus or a virus. I think that's a Nufir virus or something like that. Um, that apparently began in a fish market, or allegedly began in a fish market, with someone buying some kind of food, wildlife, I suppose, and allegedly, or as I suppose, not cooking it sufficiently, and exposing themselves or their family members to coronavirus. Now, coronavirus is a virus that is related to the common cold virus, and um, it apparently has been killing people in China with respiratory symptoms, and I'll go over some of the symptoms here for us. The the first news story that I read about it actually said that we're one mutation away from this becoming a pandemic. I don't know how they know that, but mutations are very important to understand the progression. You know, changes. The, 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 it's not every day that you get a species jump of a virus. It's unclear which species it came from. We'll get to some of the findings from CDC when they went into the market and they surveyed the meat. But the characteristic symptoms include fever, cough, and then it develops into a severe cough. And then after a while, suddenly turns into more severe symptoms with pneumonia. And when I heard all of this, this was the standard byline that there's something coming, and it may travel, it may escape Wuhan, China. The first thing that I remembered was all of what we learned from Ebola when Ebola broke out, and Zika broke out, and the chikungunya outbreak, and so on.
SARS.
Yeah, exactly. SARS, which is a coronavirus, and specifically, I remember that at the minute that they got funded for a vaccine on Ebola, it fell from the news completely. Just right. I thought there were going to be 20 million cases of Ebola. The minute they got the funding for Zika, it fell from the news for a vaccine. And the minute that they get funding for coronavirus, the first story that I heard was we're one mutation away from a pandemic. The next story was we've learned how to make vaccines overnight. We could do this really quickly now. And so, what's your overall impression? We'll start with you and your overall impression. We're going to go really deep into coronavirus, but what's your overall impression when you first heard about it?
So I've seen the propaganda in the media and the fear tactics they use to try to manipulate your emotions. And so when I saw it, I completely dismissed it. I don't
Hmm.
think that we should fear disease. I think that we should be more focused on keeping our guts healthy through organic foods, probiotics, any type of supplements you may add, whatever that is for you. That is how you will protect your body from any disease. You don't have to fear Ebola virus, when the media tells you to, or chicken pox or mumps or coronavirus, whatever they're trying to spill on you. And so I remember when, like, I think it was Patrick with Highwire went down to the hospital during the flu epidemic, and they
Hmm.
had outside tents, and they were reporting that people were just coming in, and the emergency rooms are packed, and they don't know how to handle all these sick people that are getting sick and dying of the flu. And Patrick went down and went to the hospital, and there was like empty tents. They were set up, but nobody was there, and
And,
the
and
ER
no
room
one
was
was in the
empty.
waiting room at all. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like one or two people in the waiting room.
So, and then when you take media reports from other countries, I mean, we already know that our mainstream media lies. We already know that they have an agenda to push. We already know that they have funding that they need to keep coming in. So they have to, give the reports that they've been told by those funders. So for me, like, I didn't even. I actually posted a meme that was like coronavirus with a bunch of cases of beer, like, got me the coronavirus.
Right.
So
So you're not taking it seriously at all. You're not concerned. And so as a scientist, I'm looking at the reports that are coming out, and I'm constantly, as the days go on, I'm constantly calculating the reported death rate, and that's an important factor. And I'm constantly looking for statistics on things like the basic reproduction rate, which is the number of people that an infected person is likely to infect before they get better or die. And so these characteristics of viruses are real things that we can measure. The data and the reliability of the data are always in question, especially when you're dealing with something like the information firewall from China. The public health officials, like at the World Health Organization, are very concerned that China may, for various reasons, hold back information and not present it to the public insufficient time for the public to engage, the rest of, I mean, the rest of the world to engage, and maybe even to help them if there is a serious type of an outbreak, right? That where it's going to kill millions of people or something. And so, the it's like a seesaw watching the news and watching the information coming and going. I don't know if we lost your call. Oh, there you are. But the the timeline, then, I'm looking at this, and it seems to have about a 2.9% death rate for infection, right? So if you think about the 80 or so that are dead now and the 2,000, the last time I did the calculation, I think it was 56 out of 2,000, which works up to be about 2.9 or 3%, which is a pretty high death rate if it's real, right?
it's real. If
If
it's
it's
real, that's
if
if
I-
keyword.
if it's real. But if the infection rate, if there's 40,000 cases, which is what I read today, then we're dealing with a much, much smaller death rate in terms of the cases that we know of so far. If we have 80 cases, and as reliable sources are saying now that it might be standard sources, I want to say, not reliable sources, but maybe 40,000, and we'll get to that source, then it's a 0.002%, okay, death rate, which is a much lower death rate. But nevertheless, let's assume that it has a 2.9% death rate. But that's terrifying. I mean, if you have the possibility of getting anything happen in your life and there's a 3% chance of dying from it, most people are going to say, okay, do everything we can. I'm not going to do that. And I don't care if they get on an airplane. I don't care if it's walking down the street, riding a bus, whatever. If it has a 3% death rate, like a car seat for your baby, here's your new car seat. It's got a 3% death rate. Nobody's going to want it. Here's a vaccine, 3% death rate. Nobody's going to want it, right? It's atrocious. So I like to use these analogies, but the reliability of the information coming out is circumspect, and the public no longer trusts public health officials, and no longer trusts, much of the public does no longer trusts the official party line on these things. And I spent a huge amount of time going into the biology of the Ebola virus. A lot of time. I was just looking at this book from 2015 over, and I see a lot of the same mistakes that were being made by the CDC and being made by others when Ebola broke out. Okay, there was a real massive outbreak of Ebola. What the original cause of it was, we don't know for sure, but there was that, and they scared a lot of people. And
A lot of
that
people.
and that frightening the fear response caused a lot of people not to act in a manner that might have reduced the transmission rate. And we're going to talk about the basic reproductive rate for a minute. My first post on this, and it might be my only post on this, was on Facebook, and I basically said, listen, there's a lot of things that we can do. If the rate of reproduction of this virus, and I have an image here I'm going to put up here, I'm going to throw up here um, somewhere. Where did I put it? Oh, I didn't upload the PowerPoint. I have to upload that PowerPoint. But the rate of reproduction of this virus is about 2 to 3 people. So if you're infected, averages over a large population, you might infect 2 or 3 people, which sounds, oh my God, you're doubling, you're doubling, you're doubling. But measles is like 8. If you really have a measles infection, you're around unvaccinated people that are going to get a measles diagnosis. If you infect
Or
them,
vaccinated.
well, no, I said I'm talking about diagnosis. We're talking about cases,
Okay.
recognizable cases, and you're right about that. But my point being, if I have the measles and I'm a kid and I have a measles in 1950, when I was in the United States, I would on average infect maybe about 8 people. That's the statistic. So this virus is apparently a lot less infectious, if you will, a lower reproductive rate than measles. But then the more recent statistics I read today were about 4 to 5, and I don't know why they increased over time. Are they new calculations? That's about what the mumps has, about 4 to 5 people you're going to infect. And so I said in Facebook, here's what you do, right? If you're in public and you're sick and you're at work, go home. If you're feeling like you're sick, stay home. If you know somebody has been sick, don't invite them over. Wash your hands, right?
Good one.
If you're in a public place or you run a public place like a store or something like that, sanitize and clean light fixtures, sanitize and clean doorknobs, right? And if you were going out into public, don't put your hands above your shoulders. And that was really strange. A lot of people said, what are you talking about? Put my hands above my shoulders. I'm trying to get something off the top shelf. Why am I not supposed to put my hands above the shoulders? So I learned this from Gavin McGregor Skinner, who was one of the talking heads on all of the news outlets about Ebola. If you remember, I'm not going to put my hands above my shoulders. It means you're not going to touch your nose and your eyes and your ears. So if you picked up the
That's a solid
virus,
point.
right,
Yeah.
it's a concrete like barrier. You're not going to do it. Just don't raise your hands above your shoulders. Wash your hands, and as I rub my nose, wash your hands constantly, 3 or 4 times a day, whatever, whenever you touch something, and to reduce your risk of getting infected. If you know someone's been infected or know somebody's been next to somebody's, in other words, do the same thing that we're supposed to do if there's a influenza outbreak. Now,
I do want to add it does matter what kind of soaps you use, because if you're using antibacterial soaps, that is just making your hand, it's killing the good and the bad bacteria.
right.
Makes you more
Well,
susceptible. So
right. And what we just want to do is we want to wash the virus physically away from your body. You don't have to stick your hands in bleach or anything like that. The point is just, right. So, so my reaction was, and I've said this publicly on Twitter and so on, was to say, why hasn't CDC instructed all news media outlets, right, to instruct everyone how to reduce the rate of reproduction? It's really about bringing the transmission rate from 2 to 3 down to below 1. Once we get down to below 1, then game over. It'll burn itself out, no problem, regardless of what the virus is. Okay. Then
yeah.
that's the information that I had at that point in time a few days ago. And then let me bring up a website here that I hope everybody can see from Yale University. It was about 24 hours after I put my thing out. Which one is it? Dum. Hmm. Yep, here it is, Yale Medicine. I'll bring it up. 5 things everyone should know about the 2019 novel coronavirus. And guess what they say? They say, importantly, it may be mild, but in some cases it can be serious. Okay, blah, 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 all that. And they say, guidelines will evolve as doctors know more. And they give some practical input, like avoid contact with sick people. So they were the first people that I saw, talk about some of the common sense things we just talked about. But it still blows my mind why CDC doesn't say, okay, we're in flu season, everybody wash your hands. Everybody make sure you don't touch, just the common sense things to make sure the rate of reproduction goes down. It seems so irresponsible if the idea is to let the virus burn, help the virus burn out, so we're not dealing with it. Um, it's very,
But it makes sense if you want to sell a vaccine. It
yeah.
makes sense if you want to sell a pharma product. Why would you try to reduce the cases? You need
Well,
the fear to go.
yeah, absolutely. But there is no vaccine for coronavirus. So in this case, it should be the number one thing that they say, right? If they're trying to foster fear so that they can get funding for a coronavirus vaccine, and they're
Oh,
ramping
true.
us all into fear, and your theory that it's all propaganda and so on, or that it's opportunistic. Now that may be true. It may not be true. Let's see what time shows. But interestingly, on this timeline, it turns out that before um, before the outbreak last November, there was a pandemic simulation exercise spotlighting massive preparedness gaps at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. And there's video about this. There's video from this that if I can bring it up, I'd like to play it. Um, if it'll play. Oh, I have to sign in to confirm my age. That's not going to work. Nevertheless, the video's out there, and what you hear in the video is you hear all of these public health officials, scientists, and people with basically saying, "All right, it's a simulation." So they're saying it's got about a 10% death rate, much higher than the death rate that we can see right now from this corona. But it was about a coronavirus, and that's the amazing thing. The simulation was about a coronavirus. What a coincidence, okay? And then they come forward and they say, look, we're getting a lot of resistance from anti-vaxxers. There's a lot of misinformation being posted online, and so the world has decided that there's only going to be one information outlet about any of this, and it's going to be the World Health Organization. And we're shutting down people on Facebook. We're shutting down people on Twitter. The public is not allowed to talk about this in any way, shape, or form. And I'm like, what do anti-vaxxers have to do with this? There's no vaccine for coronavirus. Why are they talking about anti-vaxxers? If there's an outbreak of a coronavirus, right, then what in the world do anti-vaxxers have to do with this unless your concern is related to a vaccine, right? So it's funny because then we see this other thing that came out of Johns Hopkins more recently, where they realized they were scaring people. In October 2019, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security hosted a pandemic with partners, including Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then recently, the Health Center has received questions about whether that pandemic exercise predicted the current novel coronavirus outbreak in China. To be clear, the Center for Health Security and the partners did not make a prediction during a tabletop exercise. For the scenario, we modeled a fictional coronavirus pandemic, but we explicitly stated that it was not a prediction. Instead, the exercise served to highlight preparedness and response challenges that would likely arise in a very severe pandemic. We are now predicting that the nCoV 2019 outbreak, we are not now predicting, this is a clarification, we are not now predicting that the nCoV 2019 outbreak will kill 65 million people. So in their simulation, where they were saying we have to shut down all talk about this, and there's going to be, their simulation was so bad that there were going to be 65 million people killed in their simulation. But there's
Yeah.
video out there of this panel talking about anti-vaxxers as if we're somehow responsible for the lethality of this virus. There's no vaccine for coronavirus. What the hell do anti-vaxxers have to do with this at all? None whatsoever. So this is really, really surreptitiously lucky, maybe planned. I don't know, but is it theater? What do you think?
Well, I think this is like the third time I've seen the Gates Foundation come out and predict that this is the virus that will sweep through and kill millions of people. I don't. It could be just theater. I think it's control and power for sure. I think that if they keep us in the state of fear, that fear really is, it keeps us in a frozen state when you're in the state of fear. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So this simulation went on, and it's on YouTube, and it's fascinating. I wish that I had logged in or downloaded the video for this, but the simulation goes on, and then we see stories in the news like a doctor at a hospital in Wuhan died after treating the patients with the coronavirus. This was pointed out to me by a Pittsburgh area vaccine risk aware mom. The problem with the story is that it mentions that the doctor is retired. So why was the doctor treating? They must have called him back into action because of the large number of patients, right? So then
So,
go ahead.
like, well, the common sense question for me is, what kind of other drugs did they give him to treat him? How old was he? What kind of health status was he already in? I mean, there's so much more than just saying he died from coronavirus. And I think that that's, you hear it's the same thing with flu deaths. People die, all these people are dying from the flu. Well, how was it treated? Tylenol and Tamiflu?
Uh-huh.
So what
Right,
actually killed them?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So my question about the coronavirus deaths that are happening in Wuhan are as follows. How many people for the past 5 years died of respiratory illnesses in Wuhan, China, who also had a coronavirus infection of one type or the other? Okay. That's a very important question because
Very.
unless we know kind of the baseline um, death rate of people with um, infections, that respiratory virus infections, who also happen to have incidental coronavirus infections, we really don't know what we're talking about. Now, when they say, okay, well, wait a minute, this is a particular kind of coronavirus, yeah, I think you're going to find what I'm about to share fairly interesting. I have to upload the slides.
I'm looking
Um,
forward to it.
yeah, thank you. So on Facebook and on social media, there is some information circulating that have people wondering, hey, wait a minute, you know, let me see, PowerPoint. Why in the world are we talking about coronavirus? If we're talking about coronavirus, then why in the world would a patent for coronavirus happen to expire right around the time that this outbreak is happening? And is that related in any way to the announcement that we have this? And here we go. I'm going to give you guys a presentation. This is some research that I did today on the coronavirus facts, starting with the question of, well, there's the basic reproduction rate. I got to go back. This thing goes too fast. All right. The basic reproduction rate, I've seen it ranged from 1.4 to 2.5, and then it jumped to 2.3, and now it's 4.5. I really don't know what it is for this particular strain of coronavirus, but for a typical coronavirus, it's pretty low. So here's what I did. On Facebook, there's information circulating. There's comments and questions about this patented coronavirus and the novel 2014 coronavirus somehow potentially being linked. And here's how science works, right? So science works by asking questions. Here's the emerging viruses without borders, the Wuhan coronavirus. This was published in MDIP or MDPI. This is a standard peer-reviewed journal called Viruses, and the point being of this paper, um, we really don't know much about this coronavirus. It appears to be somewhat different. We're grateful that the Chinese published the sequence, which on GenBank, and GenBank is a national database of genetic sequence information, and I use it all the time in the research that I do. And go to the next one. We see comments like this on Facebook. Let's just ignore the fact that they hold on to the patent on this virus, which is based in China at the lab in the city where it broke out. And there's a link here to the patent. So this is the patent information, coronavirus isolated from humans, Google patent. And so I went into the link, I followed the link to the coronavirus sequence in GenBank. And this is the actual patent file from Google Patents. And then you go in and lo and behold, what do you see? You see the accession numbers for the GenBank sequences for the patent that everybody's in an uproar about. And so I went to the National Center for Biotechnology Information and I performed an analysis called BLAST, where you take the nucleotide sequence of the new coronavirus and you compare it, the sequence information, to these patented sequences that are isolated. And this one was 82.3% similar. The next one was 82.25% similar. The next one was, I can't remember, it was 82.29. So they're all about 83% similar to the novel coronavirus. You can see it right here on the screen. This is the output of the alignment that I did. And then I did a phylogenetic analysis for everybody. This is a radial phylogenetic tree. And if it was the same, then it would be clustered with the other coronaviruses. It is very different. These branches on this tree tell us that this particular coronavirus is most closely related to a bat coronavirus, okay? And it's very different from all of the other coronaviruses in GenBank. So, like I always say at IPAC, we're going to be publishing some things from time to time that just clarify the situation. They don't really give us real answers, but we can't say that in any way that this particular virus is associated with the patent. And I would encourage people on Facebook and other places that are saying things like they know that there's something afoot because someone patented a coronavirus, that there's a conspiracy and therefore there's a problem. Of course, there's patents on coronaviruses, just like there's patents on Ebola virus and there's patents on influenza virus, because when you isolate it, the international law allows patenting of gene sequences. It's an automatic that happens for universities to do this. But they might also patent coronavirus so they can modify it so they can test what happens because it might not infect, say, lung epithelium in mice. And they want to know how to treat it if it infects lung epithelium. It's hypothetical. I'm not saying that it is. So the problem is when we speculate, we have to speculate. That's where science starts. We speculate and say, hey, there's a patent. What does that mean? The public's going to ask the question. That's what IPAC can do. IPAC can answer questions to the extent that we can and say this looks like a very different thing. Now, I don't mean to stoke fear. I don't mean to cause people to feel uncomfortable. I mean to tell the facts and then this is what I found and what do we do with it, right? And so, what do you think about that? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I will be the first to admit that I did share that link of it being patent.
Hmm.
I am thankful for you. I mean, I've always taken a stance of I don't want to hear what I want to hear. I want the facts and the truth,
Right.
so we can always do better. So I do appreciate you bringing that information.
Right. And so that brings up the question of, is it really from the wildlife where the meat is sold in the market? And so um, I found a CDC report that said something like 33% of 33 out of 585 of the meat samples taken from the Wuhan meat market after they closed it down had coronavirus. That's a huge amount. In other words, this coronavirus was obviously in whatever meat that they didn't say the type of meat, right? They didn't say the type
Yeah.
of meat. So according to CDC's representation of what's going on, it's very prevalent, hugely prevalent in food. It's just people usually kill it by cooking, right? And this person got unlucky and bought some meat and didn't cook it properly or something like that, if that's the story. So now we're going on this seesaw of information about what's happening. Is it this? Is it that? Next thing you know, Washington Times, and I'm telling you right now, I've seen people blame anti vaxxers for spreading rumors that this virus is a bioweaponized weapon, right? A bioweaponized virus by China. And guess who provided this information? Washington Times. Coronavirus may have originated in a lab linked to China's biowarfare program. But wait, let's blame the anti vaxxers for spreading misinformation online. Is this possibly this kind of thing where they spread the information and then turn around and blame the vaccine risk aware community? Because
It
they
looks
want
like
to, they're opportunistically, they want to spread fear, number one, and they want to control the narrative, number two, right? That's what it feels like to me. That's I'm getting really suspicious here that, um, maybe there's a program at play here. Now, SIDRAP, I actually have a lot of respect for the researchers at SIDRAP. They're somewhat independent, they're a bit like IPAC. Look at what they say. Experts, nCoV spread in China's cities could trigger global epidemic. Okay. Now, why did they say that? They say that because they're looking at the 44,000 Wuhan cases. What? I thought there were 2,000 Wuhan cases. Projection of 44,000 Wuhan cases. They go on in this to explain that maybe, there's asymptomatic carriers. The Chinese apparently did not come forward initially and say that, yes, you can transmit this. There's a 5 to 7 day period where you might have an infection. This is what they're saying. And you could transmit it, but you feel fine. Asymptomatic transmission. So 44,000 cases are walking around in Wuhan right now. It makes me wonder, and this will freak you out, if those videos of the scrapers that were scraping for the new hospital are actually digging some mass grave. 44,000 dead, right? That's cases. Sorry, 44,000 dead with a 5% a 2% kill rate. And then there's all these videos that I've seen online that are allegedly smuggled out of China of people lying, falling down face first in the streets okay. But then the official report says it's the elderly that are dying. It's the immunocompromised that are dying. And then you see these videos that are smuggled out of China that show corpses in the hallways of the hospitals. So it's really, 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 really important that CDC listen up, that World Health Organization listen up, and understand that your vaccine risk and injury denial program to secure the safety and security of your childhood vaccination program for profit for billions of dollars is putting the world at risk of not knowing what the hell to make out of information that's coming to them if there's really an outbreak. If the Wuhan virus is seriously going to come and kill 65 million people across the world, or 30 million people, or 20 million, or 3 million people across the world, and the public reacts in a manner that is not consistent with, let's say, trusting the government, that's not the public's fault. Stop blaming the anti vaxxers. You've fed misinformation after misinformation after misinformation since 1986. It's
Yes.
right. You agree with that?
Oh, I think it's been longer than 86. I mean, we've
Well,
been fed propaganda and lies from government for much longer than that.
I'm talking about vaccine stuff. So,
Well, yes. Yeah, but I think even before that, it always was centered around a for-profit model. So,
medicine used to not be for profit. You know that, right? So it used to be considered unethical and a prosecutable offense if you turned a profit in medicine. It wasn't until the privatization of medicine, and there was actually
what year?
discussion. It was about in the 1980s when everything changed. It was about 1985, and there were
Okay.
ethical discussions. There was a doctor in Canada that published, once you start commoditizing quality of life years. That's a QALY, quality of life years as the end goal of what your medical decisions are going to make. And you get the insurance companies involved. And the insurance companies, you would think that they want to save money, that they want to cut costs. But it turns out through a backhanded kind of way, insurance companies make more money the more money they pay out. They get a higher cut of the deal. It's based on the amount of cases and the number of dollars that they actually have to process. So that's what I call a perverse incentive. And and so once the accountants took over in biomedicine, it was game over. There's a runaway train that's rifling across all of our 50 states, all across. They want to bring it to all the nations in the world. That for-profit medicine is the most dangerous creature on the planet, and we have to turn this around. Now, look at this. This is a story a long time ago, um, 2008, 19, sometime 2000, March 2019. Biowarfare experts question why Canada was sending lethal viruses to China. So there's a
Crazy.
there's a there's a bioweapons laboratory, I guess, or a BCL4, I should say, laboratory I think it's in Manitoba. And there was a Chinese scientist there that was escorted off the premises because she allegedly sent lethal viruses. She violated protocol and sent lethal viruses to China to a bioweapons laboratory that happens to be located in Wuhan, China. My point is that as an IPAC scientist studying all of this as closely as I can in the short time that I put into this, I really can't tell you what's going on. I don't know if there's a serious outbreak of a virus. I don't know if it's all propaganda. I don't know if the Chinese government's in cahoots with the World Health Organizations. I can't tell you. I don't want to stoke fear, but I will tell you that in this book, I said that the number one mistake that the CDC made was when they didn't know something, they made something up so that they didn't get in trouble for being the CDC and not knowing what's going on. And that a scientist, when they say an ethical scientist, a mark of an ethical scientist is if they don't know something, is they will say, I don't know. And it's important to know what we don't know. And that's why you're at the what we do not yet know, WWDNYK Studios. All right. This is what I wrote in this book. Rational people change their mind in the face of new evidence. In the face of their own ignorance, rational people say, I don't know. And so, Jackie, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell the listeners and followers of Unbreaking Science and of IPAC that you can't count on me to sort this out because there's way too many conflicting reports. And that, like you said, that's going to shut us down. We do not know. It's going to make us not act. So, what's your advice for people who are concerned they're going to get a virus?
Well, for one, be slow to response. We don't know what we don't know, like you were saying. So don't overreact. Do not let fear overcome because then you cannot make rational judgments. And you have to be able to process things accurately. And we really want to stick to reality and what's going on. So, best way that my family prevents getting sick and illnesses is vitamin C, organic foods. We try to eat a healthy lifestyle and we don't get vaccines.
Right. So
So,
some of the vaccines are going to hurt your immune system. There's no doubt about it. Some of the
Yes,
vaccines
I believe that.
with thimerosal, like the flu vaccine with thimerosal, that's absolutely going to harm your immune system. It's going to impair your body's ability to remember which respiratory viruses it's immune to. So,
Yeah.
well, I can tell you that I was taken behind the woodshed on Twitter, and justifiably so, because like many of the followers who shared something without checking it out, I shared a cutout from Ben Collins' study that, look, aha, here it is. There's an increased risk of non-influenza respiratory virus infections. It's a study I've been sharing out for a year and a half, and it's a good share. It's good information. It's a good study. But I shared that, look, one of the viruses that are listed was coronavirus. But it turned out that the coronavirus was not found to be significantly increased in people that got the thimerosal vaccine. So what did I do? I retracted my Twitter and I issued an apology, a correction. I said this, and I took a screenshot of my own Twitter. I deleted my Twitter and I stated that I made a mistake. Why? Because I'm an objective scientist. And when we make mistakes, we say, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I made a mistake. Okay. So if you have posts out there that are misleading people and you know now that they're misleading people, if I've convinced you that this coronavirus is in fact different and may not be related to the patent. For all I know, it may still be related through some obscure pathway to bioweapons or whatever. I don't know. But don't look to IPAC for the final story on this virus. We're going to have to wait and see what time brings. So, so Jackie,
I think another thing that we really, when we start talking about death rates and different things, we have to put things in perspective. I watched a documentary about downtown Seattle, and they are talking about their homelessness crisis. But really, they were like, we don't necessarily have it's homelessness, but it's more of heroin. It's a heroin addict crisis.
big
And
time,
they have
100%.
drug needles everywhere. They said they're losing one person every 36 hours to a heroin overdose.
And
That is a
where
real
does there
crisis.
and where's the heroin overdose? Where do the heroin addicts come from? They come from people who got, Ritalin is a gateway drug for opioids. They get on opioids, they can't get a script, so they turn to the street to get to heroin. It happens in good, healthy families, good, homegrown families, with very good parents, very good siblings, very good drug addicts. I'm going to tell you that the pharmaceutical companies have been busted providing the supplies to make these um, drugs to the drug cartel. Okay, so that's
It's yeah,
incredibly evil what's happening. And for anyone who's suffering with addiction, I know people that have gotten they've kicked the habit. Don't believe the stories. Don't believe the hype that you can't get off of it. That's like saying autism is
exactly.
genetic, ADHD is genetic, nothing you can do about it, right? Oh, you can't cure addiction. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Yeah, I
You
say
can
the
get
same.
off of it.
Yeah. Yes, we can. We can help people too. So
Right.
yes,
All right.
but it's. I think we just have to live in reality and perspective. Let's not get too hyped up and be slow to react. So
Right. So what I want to introduce is called the Ebola fist bump. You know what the Ebola fist bump is?
no,
It's where you hit people with your elbow. You just
we can
yeah,
do
the Ebola fist bump. There you go. That's,
that.
there you go. That way you're not touching your hands, you're not shaking hands, you're not high fiving. Okay. And
Like we should teach that to Howie Mandel. That will be his new thing.
yeah,
Howie.
he's a
He's a
germaphobe, right?
germaphobe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a shirt that says "I heart bacteria." I love it. Like
Well, I mean, the point being, right, if we look at how many people have coronavirus every year and don't die, this coronavirus may in fact be very different. This coronavirus, for all we know, the last thing, I don't want to spread any rumors, right? I don't want to repeat anything. People send me stuff all the time, right? But one of the scenarios that I'm not standing by, one of the scenarios that somebody sent me on Facebook to look into was that there was a bioweapons lab The bioweapons lab had a dead monkey, and they're supposed to tag and bag the monkey carcass in a BSL-4 manner so that it gets incinerated, and that this dead monkey from a BSL-4 laboratory made it into the food chain. Because it's rare, it's tasty, it's a delicacy, whatever. I doubt it. I'm telling you right now, I doubt that that's the story, right? But your your face is great on this. Your face is great on this. I'm telling you, we don't know where this thing came from. And so they have to, for the PR, World Health Organization, Chinese government, they have to identify which species this came from, which animal species this came from ASAP. Tonight on Unbreaking Science was the first phylogenetic tree that I've ever seen associating this virus to other viruses of the coronavirus family. And it's most closely related to a bat coronavirus, but it is very different from those bat coronaviruses, so I don't know where it came from. And that's where we stand right now. There are unknowns. Don't be afraid. Stay healthy. Live your life. If you feel sick, stay home. If you know
Drink some
somebody,
vitamin C.
yeah.
Yeah.
If don't invite people over to your house, and if you don't go to a party for crying out loud, if you've got a cough or a cold, right? Just stay home, relax, enjoy your privacy, enjoy some time alone, watch a movie, okay? Keep your kid home
Read
from school. Go
read
ahead.
one of Dr. James's book. You show him
That's
your
right.
book. Ebola.
Yeah,
Where's the other one?
Ebola. Well, hang on, I'll
Environmental
grab it.
toxin.
Yeah, Cures versus Profits, available on
Yes.
Amazon.
Got one
Ebola,
more.
and
Where's your other one?
I don't have a copy of it right here, but they're environmental and genetic causes of autism.
I have
So
a copy. I just don't
maybe
know how to
these
read
will
it.
save the world if people stay home and read my books and not infect each other with this coronavirus. No,
Oh my gosh! And
seriously.
your aluminum study. Can we tell everyone to go and read that? That was amazing
Yeah.
information.
Thank you. I have that right here, by the way. I have that in the Journal of Trace Elements.
Yeah. Let's talk about the. Can we switch topics for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Let's talk about the 70% by 7 months. Tell me if I'm saying this right. By the age of 7 months, a child that's receiving the full CDC schedule will spend 70% of their days on aluminum toxicity.
That's the expected result. Remember, this study was not
Expect.
of, yeah, it's expected because we're using mathematical.
Oh, sorry.
That's cool. That's just the
Oh God.
expected result because we're doing mathematical modeling based on other people's empirical data. But that's right. In the first 2 years of life, we can expect 1 out of every 4 days an infant is in aluminum toxicity. I'm talking whole body aluminum exposure beyond the level that would be safe for an adult once you scale for the body weight. And you know, whether this analysis, this expected level is actually going to hold or not depends on the next phase of science that we're doing it. We want to do at IPAC. We're about to launch a virtual fashion show with beautiful men and women getting all dolled up and dressed up and doing their best live video of their fashion show, modeling, pictures, whatever, to drive people to the IPAC website to fund an autoimmune research fund so that we can fund a study of the injection of aluminum hydroxide into infant mice at doses that are scaled per body weight that match the CDC schedule. That study's never been done. It's the largest gaping hole in vaccine safety science for the CDC schedule ever. But the other part of this
I think I want to
study,
participate in that.
oh, that'd be great. I think
Yeah.
yeah, that fantastic. So that launch is coming soon. The other finding that in this study that we published, well, it's coming out in 2020, but it's already out there online, um, was that in Paul Thomas's practice with the vaccine friendly plan, in the first 7 months of life, children are only in aluminum toxicity expected to be in aluminum toxicity 5% of their days. So if you're in a state where
Yes.
your exemption has been taken away and you're forced vaccinated by the state and you can't homeschool and you're forced vaccinated and you can't find someone to help you out, then look at the vaccine friendly plan. as an alternative and try to convince your pediatrician that this is something that they should look at.
Hold on 1 second, okay?
Sure. So
Okay.
all right, so you got some company there, huh? All right, so
yes,
here we are.
My kids. So I'm hiding. Just so everyone knows, they're probably like, "Why is she sitting in the car?" I will tell you, I have children, and it gets noisy, and sometimes they just like blurt out, and so yeah.
I love
So
it.
I'm hiding in the car while they do their thing, but then the older boys actually have a basketball game here coming up, so they're gonna take the other vehicle. I'm gonna move this car here real quick. So just so everyone knows.
Oh, this is a riot. So while you're relocating your car, this is the third book, The Environmental and Genetic Causes of Autism. These books will save the world if everybody stays home and reads these books. Look at all that writing I did. Look how many words I put together. Look at all that stuff. And CBC tries to say I want to be seen as a scientist. And that's ridiculous. My institute the IPAC has an IRB approved facts on vax study. You don't want to be seen as a scientist if you're doing science.
So I want to say every time I see your lectures and the information that you bring, I am so incredibly thankful that we said no to vaccinating our children.
Yeah.
And that's just makes my foundation that much stronger to have 8 healthy non-vaccinated children that are not living in aluminum toxicity. So
yeah.
Thank you for all you do.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm happy to bring objectivity back to science, and that's what I do every day. Jackie, I wanted to give you the last shot, some closing thoughts for your fellow Americans and people around the world when they watch this video and they want to go to sleep at night. What can you tell them to make them feel a little bit safer?
Well, I would say shut off the media. Do not let mainstream media give you sound bites of information that are controlling your emotions. They give you a sound bite of information to get you a knee-jerk reaction so that you're constantly in this state of fear. Just turn it off, set yourself free. Recognize the propaganda, the stories that they're trying to sell you on. And and live your life. Speak your truth, get out there, eat healthy, eat clean. Do not let someone put you in a state of fear over coronavirus.
Thank you. So listen, my name is Dr. James Lyons-Weiler. You've been listening to me with Jaclyn Gallion. And go to the IPAC website, ipa-knowledge.org. Be a monthly donor for IPAC or find us on Patreon, WWDNYK. Go to patreon.com/WWDNYK. A small monthly donation at either of those places will keep this information coming as long as possible. They want to shut us down. They want to make us look foolish. And I'm telling you right now, I've done the best job that I could do in a very short period of time to get this information gathered in a way where you can make up your own mind about what you think is happening. I'm sorry to say I haven't been able to figure out what's real and what's not real. And that's because I'm objective. I don't have an agenda. If I knew what was really happening, I would tell you. So we're going to close out, Jackie, with Nokomi's sound bug here for her song Unbreaking Science. So bear with me as I cut to it. And you're going to disappear. I'm going to disappear, but we can hang out and listen. Hang on. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. James Lyons-Weiler, a.k.a. Dr. Jackie. In this episode, we're going to review the evidence that science is broken. This is not a news story.
The will be told, the people will know the price of corporate science really taking its toll. Whistleblowers blow, public health at a low. They say the science is settled, but how do they know?
Science.
Ask questions, critically think, you should try it. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking science.
You can't deny it. You sure can't buy it. Fact check, use your brain, don't be quiet. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking science.
Using the tools of the trade to back up what we say. You can't be silent when it comes to unbreaking science. Let's light the truth up, next level ultraviolet. You got a hypothesis, do a critical test. Make an observation without being biased. Use logic and reason mixed with evidence. Look for patterns and results with significance. Calculate them numbers, real accurate, or else your findings won't be legit. Don't cherry pick, but be skeptic, cause broke is science, it makes us sick. That science is being funded by the very same people that run it, so they can promote a product, so they can make that money, huh? Try not to laugh, cause this ain't nothing funny. All these science-like activities, no joke, they call them studies. Hand-picking sample groups and no true placebos. Losing public trust the more and more that we know. The truth will be told, the people will know. The price of corporate science really taking its toll. Whistleblowers blow, public health at a low. They say the science is settled, but how do they know?
Science.
Ask questions, critically think, you should try it. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking science.
You can't deny it, you sure can't buy it. Fact check, use your brain, don't be quiet. It's pure, unadulterated science.